Lights up bright, dope, Campbell Stadium is alive. Seminoles rise and fight to survive. Helmet gleam under that blazing sun. Florida State where champions run. Seminole sideline 365. Feel the roar, we're coming alive. Garnet and gold in the battle we thrive. This is our house where legends arrive. Turf torn up under Seminole feet. The war chant pounds to the heart's own beat. Chop through the noise like a storm in the sky. 2025, we reach for the high. Seminole sideline 365.
Welcome back to Seminole Sideline 365. My name is KB, and with me, as always, is the old man. Thank you again for being with us. We got a lot to go over tonight, so we're going to be breaking down week by week the 2025 season as we are about to kick off next weekend. So we won't be obviously diving too deeply into each game. This is really to kind of give our season predictions and give what our win-loss records are. We haven't done that yet. And obviously, we need to do that before week one kicks off here. And then, obviously, on Thursday of next week, we'll be doing our week one preview with Alabama. So be sure to like and subscribe to get the notification for that show when we'll dive deeper into that specific matchup. But excited to break down the schedule here quickly, give our predictions and the reason why we predict a win or a loss, and see what it breaks down to, because we were way off last year. As most people were across the Seminole Nation. But we're hoping for better things, and I think based on how this schedule is built, it can be better, and how this roster is built, it can be better. But before we get into that, and before we start breaking it down and giving our thoughts, anything you would like to bring up or discuss before then?
You don't want to know what I want to bring up. It's all about freaking computers, okay? I freaking hate it. I've got a great office here, and every time I get ready for the last couple of shows, it's like the computers go crazy. It's like now it's saying the browser has blocked your mic and camera. So obviously I'm on my phone, okay? But it's getting ridiculous, and I'm getting ready to trash all this shit and go out and buy all new technical stuff, period. That's where I'm at on computers. And I know I'm not the only one out there that suffers through this shit, you know? And yeah, I am a little fired up. So I'm ready to move on with the show.
All right.
Oh, and I got a beer. You never see me drink a beer on here. I got an Ultra tonight. I'm definitely fired up. It's ridiculous. Right. You know, it works 30 minutes out, and then it doesn't work.
All right. Well, we're not here to discuss the old man's technical issues. We're here to talk about Florida State. Good to see you, Jalen. Thanks for coming by. And so we're going to dive into it, give our breakdowns. And as we're going through, if you guys have any thoughts on or disagree with our opinions on the win-loss records here, let us know in the chat, and we'll pull those up. So going into week one, obviously, is the matchup we've been talking about for months and months now. And this is the one we'll start with, is Alabama coming into Doak Campbell Stadium, the new Doak Campbell Stadium, on August 30th. I think this one is, well, ESPN's predicting a 90 win probability for Alabama. You know, you can take those numbers for what they are. You know, there's not much you can take into those, but that's what the odds are saying on their end. For me, and like I said, just because if I pick against Florida State doesn't mean I'm less of a fan. I think I'm going about this as just a observer from the outside. Like I said, we haven't seen much from camp. It's been blocked off. This is a very, very new roster. For this matchup, I think it's going to come down to a couple of things. Obviously, Alabama's bringing in a new quarterback. They're starting a new quarterback. They got some new pieces, just like Florida State does. But obviously, they had a lot more success last year, going 9-4, 9-3 last year. And I think it's going to be some adjustment. I think if we are going to beat Alabama, this is the week to beat them early on in the season before their midseason form and getting all those pieces into place. I don't believe Florida State does win this game. I think the reason for that is just because I think Florida State is totally rebuilt, and I think it's going to take some time for this offense to click. I think it's going to take some time for the defense, especially for a new complex 3-3-5 defense to click into place as well. And I just think due to Alabama just having a little bit of a talent gap on us, and due to the fact that they do have some returners on that defensive side, I do think it is an advantage for Alabama, and I do think they come out with this win. The big thing for me will be obviously to see how competitive Florida State can be. How does guys like the defense play on Shaheem Brown, KJ Kirkland? How does Castellanos play? How do they utilize him? And can we keep it competitive for all 4 quarters, which I want to expect them to do that. But I think overall Alabama will come out with this win. What do you say?
Well, it's right now the line's at, I think, 13, maybe 13 and a half. It's actually gone up some. It's waffled between 12 and 13 and a half. Obviously, the easy money seems to be on Alabama. The question is, can Florida State pull it together with a team that's never really played together, a team that has been brought in basically through the portal? And can these guys step up and make this a competitive game? I think Florida State fans would probably be happy if they can make it competitive, beat the spread, keep the game exciting, and make a stand, because all the announcers are going to say, well, they were 2-10, so let's see what they can do. Alabama fans, I've been listening to some of their media sites. They're expecting a big win here. They're expecting to blow Florida State out and obliterate the spread itself. So Florida State's got some work to do. But you know what? I believe that this team could pull an upset based on what you said. You're catching the top team as the number 1 game in the schedule at home. And I think Jake Weinberg, he could get a last-second field goal, 58-yard field goal, and a walk-off field goal, and the Noles win. Is that possible? It was in a dream. But, sometimes dreams come true, sometimes they don't, KB. And I think that's where we are. Castellanos has to play the entire game. There's no doubt. We have to control the football, and our defensive line and linebackers must stop their run. They must stop their run. Now, I heard that what's his name, the quarterback for Alabama, Simpson, he has been throwing the ball around a lot, and they want to come out and fling the ball. So that's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, but he's totally unproven, and he's going to have to prove it that he can do it as a starter. He's throwing
absolutely
combined, 50 passes over 3 seasons or something like that. Never thrown a touchdown. So he, great, high school ranked quarterback, but he's got to do it in prime time, and I think that is an advantage of Florida State.
Yes.
It's an advantage for Florida State that this is a new offense for this staff. There's no tape on these guys together. There's a lot of new receiving weapons. There's new running backs. This is, like you said, a brand new roster. And with the era of the transfer portal, you can turn around a 2-10 season quickly, because it's not the same roster being churned over again or being utilized again in a different way. So that is the advantage of Florida State. And I agree with you that I do believe, and I would hope that this game would be competitive. And I would be very, very disappointed if Florida State can't put up a fight.
It has to be competitive. You're going to lose this fan base and possibly the team early on if we can't keep this competitive. I am. If we get blown out,
the team in week 1, I don't.
If you get blown out 50-15, you don't think that's going to be issues?
It's embarrassing, but I think week 1, it's embarrassing, but I think week 1 is still week 1. I think you got time before you lose the team.
I hope we don't even have to discuss this anymore about that. So I think Florida State is going to show up. I think they're going to play well in this game.
So who are you picking?
I'm picking Florida State on a last-minute field goal.
All right. So you're picking Florida State, and I'm picking Bama. And I expect it, hopefully, for them to be competitive. If not, we'll have major questions to discuss afterwards.
And I understand that I'm going way out on a ledge here.
That's your prerogative. All right, next two games we're not going to cover big time. FCS school and East
Yeah.
something. East Texas A&M FCS school went 0-13, I believe, last year. Not even worth covering there. I'm going to give us both a win.
Yeah,
on that.
we know they're both coming in for big checks. The
3-9.
only thing,
East
yeah,
East Texas A&M was 3-9. Kent State was 0-12
yeah,
last season as
yeah.
an FBS school. This shouldn't
Let me
be
let me let me
an
just say
important
this.
decision.
Let me say this, KB. Yeah, we're not going to discuss those. That's going to be big stats for the Knowles. That's where they can pile up some stuff. But the scouts don't look at that so much. But here's what's going to happen to these FBS schools. If you notice that the SEC now has gone to a 9-game conference schedule, the ACC is still at 8 games. Okay, when the ACC, and they'll go to 9 games as well. Okay, because it's all about getting to the playoffs. Is these FBS schools are going to be hurt because they always come to town to get a big paycheck, and that helps them run their programs. So that is really one of the minuses for the FBS schools.
FCS, you mean?
FCS.
So yeah, I agree. The only positives of games like this, obviously, is that you should win, and it gives you some time to work some other guys in that you may wanting to get some playing time, because hopefully it's a blowout by the fourth quarter, and hopefully you can get some of those young guys rotationally in, help once again to continue to get that defense clicking with some of the rotational guys. Same thing with
And
the
you hope
offense.
none of your stars get hurt.
Well, hopefully you can, get out ahead early and, like you said, play some guys to get some experience for those younger guys that, like you said, get the starters out quickly. So we expect those to be easy wins. If you struggle, there once again will be questions, but I would not expect that. That leads us into September 26th against Virginia. This is on the road. This is your first Friday game of the season. You have 2 of them this year, and this is your first. So this is what some could consider a trap type game Friday night. Against Virginia in Charlottesville. This is an interesting game for Virginia as well. Tony Elliott's on the hot seat there. I believe his combined record is not very good. I think he's 11-23 overall in 3 seasons. So a lot of pressure's on him. And actually, I think this past season he's brought in 30 new players, and that is in his 2 previous seasons combined, he only brought in 22. So he knows the pressure's on. He's overhauled the roster at Virginia. They were 5-7 last year. He knows his ass is on the line. Still, the talent gap should be there for Florida State to win this. There shouldn't be any excuses in this. Florida State has the talent advantage. They have the coaching advantage in my eyes in terms of who they have in the coaching staff. But this is a Friday night on the road. You never know what can happen. Virginia also brought in Chandler Morris from North Texas, who is a decent quarterback there. And once again, it's still early in the season. Florida State is building out, is working on a new offense and building in a new defense, and anything can happen. But given what Virginia is doing, given their overhaul as a team and what they're trying to rebuild, I'm going to take Florida State, especially because Virginia isn't known for their hostile type of environment. We'll talk about NC State later. That's a whole different Friday night environment. I'm going to go with Florida State. Florida State by at least 10 to 14 points here on the road, and pick them in this matchup.
Yeah, I agree with you. Florida State, this is a must-win for them. They've got 4 or 5 really tough games, which they could lose all of those games. Virginia is not a game they can lose. It is a must-win, and they should go up there and take care of business in Charlottesville. I mean, it's a great place to see a ball game. We don't know what time. They don't have the time on the game, I don't believe, right?
7 o'clock.
Oh, 7 o'clock. That'll be a very nice time. And if we have Knowles up in the Virginia area, it's a nice ticket. It's a nice easy day. Knowles should win that. We should have them, talent. But again, we've got 2 teams built around the portal. So whatever team gets the most out of these guys is probably going to win this game. Do I expect us to blow them out? No, I don't think that's going to happen. I do think it will be a competitive game, but Florida State wins this one.
Yeah, and we're not taking into account right now, but obviously injuries will change. Can swing these games, stuff like that. But once again, Virginia's a team. If you're if we're saying we're back and we're back from bouncing back from 2-10, Virginia's a team you have to beat no matter the circumstances in my eyes, unless you're down to your 4th-string quarterback or something dramatic happens in 3 weeks. This is a team you have to beat. Also, which could work in your favor, Cam Robinson for Virginia may still be out by that time. He'll be coming off an injury. He's one of their star linebackers, so we'll have to see if he's available. But yeah, expect you to win this game. You have to win this game. If you don't, this will not only put Tony Elliott on the hot seat if he wins this game, but they'll put Norvell on the hot seat if they were somehow to drop.
Yeah, I think we're both taken there, and I will say that worst case we'll be 3-1 after that game. Worst case could be 4-0 if we pull the upset on Bama.
Yeah, so
and that takes us to the next game.
Yeah, right now you have 4-0. I have 3-1 heading into the Miami game. So let's go into that. So obviously this is a tough one. Miami hasn't left the state of Florida as of yet. They don't leave the state of Florida for a game until November of the season. So they're not doing a lot of traveling. And for Miami, you have to respect that it's going to be a tough game. They were in contention for the ACC last year until they shit the bed late into the season against Syracuse. They do lose, Cam Ward. They do replace him, obviously, the quarterback from Georgia, who hate him or love him, can throw around the football. They also bring back the top offensive line, in my opinion, in the ACC, if not top 10 in the country. And that's going to be something that this new look defense for Florida State is going to have to find a way to pressure their quarterback. You also have to keep in mind that Miami, with their schedule, has a bye week going into the Florida State game. So they've essentially are going to have 2 weeks going into the Florida State game to prepare for Florida State, which is, it is to their advantage, right? They're going to have, their first game is, basically they'll play Florida and then have a week off and then be able to prepare for Florida State. So, while Florida State's going to be coming away from Charlottesville and go right into that game. So that will be to their advantage as well. I think this is going to be a tough game because everything I just said, offensive line, great quarterback coming in from Miami. They also are rebuilding their defense. Defense, we know last year was the Achilles heel of that Miami team. They got a new coordinator for that. They think they've rehauled and retooled that defense, but that's to be seen until everyone gets on the field. It'll be interesting to see how they turn things around. And obviously they brought in a top 5 transfer portal class. They believe in the players that they brought in from the portal are going to bring an additional edge to their team. They did lose some weapons. They lost their top receiver, Restrepo. Lost obviously Cam Ward. They lost Damian Martinez, the running back. So they do lose some weapons there. But I think the biggest thing really that we're going to have to focus on in this game is that offensive line. How healthy is it going to this game? Can Tony White in this defense create pressure, create chaos, and get Carson Beck into pressure situations where he's having to scramble outside the pocket, make him use his legs, make him do things he doesn't want to do, and apply pressure so it takes it off of those linebackers and off those defense backs. We can't just let Carson Beck sit back there and lead this offense up and down the field for Miami, especially since But the good thing is obviously you're hosting this game. So I'm still deciding whether I think of this game. But what is your opinion of this game, and who are you feeling?
Well, I wish I could make my prediction after Miami's first 4 games, which they play Notre Dame and Florida Gators.
Yeah,
that we're going to learn a lot about the University of Miami by watching those 2 games and how they respond in those games. Yep. This is I believe another must game for Norvell and crew. You can't lose to both your rivals. So who do we have a better chance to beat? Florida at the end of the year, or can we beat Miami at home? Florida game is on the road. This is the game for us. They will have played Florida, and then they have a couple weeks off, as you said. I believe the Noles take on Miami and beat them in a very competitive game at the Doak.
Yeah, I think that.
But again, all of this depends on injuries, and I don't like these these predictions when we don't know what's going to happen game by game. I think during the season, you and I should say, okay, now we're going to look at more game by game because we know Tommy
We do.
Castellanos is out for
We
2 weeks. You know,
but we do the weekly previews, so we take that into
yeah, I
account in
know,
the
I
weekly
get it,
previews.
I get
But
it.
also,
Yeah,
injuries weren't the reason that Florida State was asked last year. We predicted them, and I mean, we still had a
no, I
quarterback.
know.
We were just terrible. So,
Okay.
you can say
I,
injuries, but this is the state of
I
what we
I
see on
like
the
the
field right now in the
Knowles
roster
at
wise.
home. Yeah, I like the Knowles at home. If they're going to bite Miami, this is our chance to do it, and I think they're going to be able to do that.
I I think that Miami having a couple extra a week to prepare for Florida State, because once again they'll have now tape on seeing how Florida State reacted and played against a very good Bama team, and they'll probably take some of those lessons. And then the first 2 weeks, UVA and then FCS and Kent State aren't really going to show them much, but I think they'll be able to take the Bama tape, take some of the UVA tape, and then use that extra week to prepare for Florida State. I really think it's going to be up to Tony White to win this game for Florida State, and I just don't know if we'll be able to do it. It's really going to come out to me how well Tony White can do, and then is that offense clicking yet for Florida State? We just never saw it click last year, and just continue to sputter and sputter and sputter and sputter. So it'll really be down to Tony White and Gus Malzahn, these new coaches, to see how well have they clicked going into that game 5 of the
Well,
season.
this is
and
a
are
new
they able to
year.
overcome?
This is a new year. We've got a new quarterback. We've got a dynamic quarterback. If they can keep him standing upright, we will have a chance in every game.
Yeah, I think it'll be competitive early, just because there's more unknowns on Florida State than there is Miami. I'm gonna give the edge to Miami just because of that. And like I said, I'm looking at this black and white. I'm not looking as a fan or da da da. I'm looking at this black and white. I'm gonna give Miami the edge right now, just because there's more knowns on their side than there is Florida State, and just because of that, I have to give the edge to Miami right now. Even though I'd love to be wrong, and I hope I am wrong, because I'd love to beat Miami at home, and we need this win. But I'm going to pick Miami right now, and you're picking Florida State. So
Yes.
let's move on to Pittsburgh. So we'll host Pittsburgh on October 11th, week after Miami. Pittsburgh's an interesting team. One of those teams where if you're looking for an 8-win plus season, it's a team you have to beat. There's no excuses for a loss against a loss against a team like Pittsburgh. Now this is a team that's typically well coached. Has the weapons. They kind of, I felt, overachieved last year and how they produced. They had some quality wins there, but this is a team that you're hosting. They went 7-6 last year, like I said. They're losing players. They bring Eli Holstein in. They have a dynamic running back, I believe, in Desmond Reed and Kyle Lewis on the linebacking side. And they recruited decently in the transfer portal. I think they were a top 20 transfer portal class. But last year, they kind of just fell apart after going 7-0 at the beginning of the year. But they do have some dynamic weapons. But I believe overall, Florida State does have, if you're looking at paper and you're seeing what players do we have in certain positions, who did they bring in, who have they lost, Florida State on paper has a better team. You're also hosting them and Doak Campbell, and I got to look at head-to-head and say right now the way it looks and the knowns of each and the types of players that we have, I'm going to go with Florida State just due to that. And I don't think Pittsburgh has, based on what I see on paper, the types of players that Florida State should lose to, and based on what Tony White's brought in and what he's going to bring with the types of players he's recruited into this, Florida State should win this. I do think it'll be somewhat competitive. I think it'll be a 10 to 14 point game. I don't think Florida State's going to blow Pittsburgh out. But once again, this is one of those games you have to win if you want 8+ wins this season. And I believe they will get it done, but I believe it will be close. I don't expect this to be a blowout.
I think the Knowles are at this point are going to be rolling in there, if my predictions are right, as a no-loss team. They're going to have won every game rolling in there. They'll come off a big victory over Miami, and they'll be sky high 7 days later as they take on Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh, it comes in the Doak Campbell again. I mean, this schedule is heavily in favor of the Knowles of having these teams at Doak Campbell. Okay, so Pittsburgh comes in here. Everybody expects the Knowles to blow them out. The Knowles have a letdown. The Knowles have a letdown after the big victory over Miami. They're undefeated at this point, and they get nipped. They get nipped. Okay, they get nipped by the Panthers. They get nipped by the Panthers. on a last-minute field goal, and we lose our first game of the season to Pittsburgh.
All right, so you're picking a loss, and I do think that I'm picking the win. You're picking the loss. I do think Pittsburgh is really that game's going to come down to how does a guy like Desmond Reed perform. This is a guy with 1,500 scrimmage yards last season, dynamic, catching the ball, running the ball, and once again, how is that defense clicking, and can the offense supplement the whatever the defense is able to contain on the offensive side? And I do, like you said, think it's close, but you're picking Pitt with the last second win there. So as we look at through the games through the middle of October, you have Florida State being 5-1, and I have us being 4-2, which at this point in the season I think would still be somewhat respectable. Even though on my end we would have lost two of our biggest games of the season thus far, you have us kind of winning our two of biggest games, which would be
yeah. I think there's 5 big games on this schedule.
We'll go through them. So let's just take a look at where we are, where we stand.
Right.
And we'll jump into our next game.
It would be more than respectful at this point. It would be outstanding at this point if the season ended with that record.
Absolutely. So we jump from Pittsburgh and hosting Pittsburgh to going on the road and traveling all the way across the country, obviously now to Stanford. So you're
who's horrible.
Who is, a very bad team. They've obviously are rebuilding their staff. They bring in Andrew Luck as, I think his role is assistant GM or GM. He's got a new role there, Andrew Luck.
Smart guy.
Frank Reich from the NFL comes in as the interim head coach. I believe that's his. And this is a game, 10:30 kickoff Eastern time. So you're traveling, late game. You're going to have to get the players adjusted to that. But overall, Stanford went 3-9 last year. They've really tried to overhaul their roster, kind of like what UVA is doing. They've kind of taken to the portal, not a great portal class, but I think it's like 17th in the ACC. It's not great, but they brought in 17 transfers this offseason, which was a record for them. So they're trying to overhaul, get new guys in that fit the scheme that they want to do. Obviously, I don't think I think there'll be some initial struggle just because the adjustment of a late game, late kick. But this is a game, once again, Florida State, I believe, wins by 10+, 14+, and gets out of there with a win, and hopefully with no injuries. That is my prediction there. The interesting fact, though, is that this season, Stanford will travel more than 23,000 miles over the course, which is more than 3 times the average of any ACC school. So
ridiculous.
Happy to host one, but I think Florida State comes away with a win, and hopefully no injuries from this.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on this one. The biggest part will be the sleep deprivation that the Noles have to put up with flying out there, and hopefully there won't be any delays and that type of stuff, which we all have had delays. I think you had a delay this week, right, KB?
Yep,
I mean, this is part of it, but they're going to be on a charter jet, which means less problems unless there's a mechanical issue. They're going to go out there. They're going to beat the Cardinal. I think in their first game, Stanford is supposed to lose to Hawaii. They're traveling to Hawaii. So, I mean, they're not going to be a very good football team. This would be a heartbreaking loss if we went out there and lost to them. This is a victory. Put a W up for the Noles.
Yeah, in fact, you can watch that game, watch Stanford if you want to start evaluating them tonight against Hawaii at 7:30 on CBS Paramount Plus.
Yep.
So, yeah, feel free if you're watching us tonight, go over there, checking that game later, and see how they're performing and get a little scouting reports on the Stanford. But yeah, that's a game that you got to come away with. No excuses.
Oh, you got to win this game. There's certain games on this schedule that are must wins.
They're must wins, and it's not just the fact that they're rebuilding. But they're also just talent gaps. So there's talent gaps that you have to overcome. You on paper you win it, and you should win it just by.
It would be inexcusable. Yeah, inexcusable.
Absolutely. All right. So we go.
And you should be able to beat Stanford with your backup quarterback, whoever that may be.
Who should be preparing, and hopefully we'll find that out. Hopefully in some of the cupcake games, who is the number 2, or maybe they will be trying out multiple guys. We'll have to find out there. So we head from Stanford to Palo Alto, and we head and host again Wake Forest, and Wake Forest is also another, and that tends to be a common theme we're hearing this season.
Another
with some of our
home game.
another home game, but also another
Jeez.
team in rebuild, another rebuilding team. So obviously they have a new coach who's rebuilding that roster. They've gone to the portal. They've signed 35 transfers out of necessity. Not necessarily. I don't think it's a
Well, that's
strategy.
football today. That's football.
So Jake Dickert is their new head coach. They're actually moving away from that slow mesh offense that we've become accustomed to over the last decade or so. And they're moving more up tempo. So that'll be interesting to see. They obviously have a new offensive coordinator, and they've lost 18 plus starters, I believe, in this offseason. So once again, the advantage on paper is going to be Florida State, just due to the absolute fact that Wake Forest is total rebuild mode. All new starters, essentially, a new head coach, a new coordinator. But once again, with that, you're not going to have a lot of tape other than what you've seen in season of them. But on paper, this is something where this is one of those games that you need to take advantage of, and you should win just on paper. Based on the talent you've brought in, based on the talent you've had, this is a game that you have to pencil in and win, or there's going to be a lot of questions asked after the game. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I think this is a win for Florida State. I think it's going to be a 14-17 plus win. Actually, the slow mesh always seemed to give Florida State a lot of issues. So it'll be see what this more up-tempo attack gives. And actually, I do think it probably helps Wake Forest recruit better, because that's the kind of
Wake Forest ran that offense much better with Sam Hartman, who's now with the Commanders. I don't know how long he's going to be there. Cut week's coming up.
Well, I mean, they have Riley Leonard in that. They had a couple of good quarterbacks in that system, but but yeah, it'll be interesting.
And both of them left to go to Notre Dame.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how that looks. But obviously, I think this Florida State offense does what it needs. I think the defense steps up, does what it needs, and I think you win by 10, 14 plus here.
No argument with me. Again, home field advantage for the Noles. It seems like they're playing almost every game at home, but the later part of the schedule, they're going to go on the road more. So these are home games. This game against Wake Forest Demon Deacons is a must win.
Yeah.
It's another must win because there's 4 or 5 games that, you could easily lose, but must win for the Noles. They'll beat the Deacons.
And that is coming after bye week. So your bye week is occurring after the Stanford game. So you're getting a week between the Stanford game and Wake Forest. So there's no excuses for a trap game.
You really don't need the bye week there. I'd rather have the bye week after Wake Forest.
No, it's a terrible use of a bye week. I don't know how that. Your bye weeks occur after East Texas A&M. You get a bye week, and then going to Kent State, and then you're.
Who schedules that? The ACC?
That's a good question. I'm not actually sure.
I don't know.
But
I don't know who schedules it.
Terrible placement of bye weeks because they're.
Well, it has to be. It has to be scheduled by the ACC. I mean, who in their right mind? I don't think Alford or Norvell would schedule it this way. I want my bye week before I play Clemson.
Well, it's not happening that way. And so, talking about Clemson, this is the next game on our schedule here.
Yeah.
So you head into Clemson on November 8th. In Clemson, South Carolina, in Death Valley. Obviously, you're one of your top 4 toughest games of the season, as it always is. The winner of this game typically predicts the champion of the ACC, as it has done in the last 4 or 5 years. So yeah, you got to come to play in this game, and this game typically is a barometer for how you are and how your team is performing. At least for Florida State, I use this game as how far have we come? Where are we at this point? How competitive are we? What's the talent look like? And because Clemson's been stable, they've been a stable program. Hate or love them, they've been a stable program within the ACC, and they're doing something right. And so, obviously, Florida State on paper does not match up well with Clemson. I don't know when anyone says they go. Clemson goes 10-4 last year. They returned 16 starters, 8 on offense. 85% of their production from last season returns. They recruit pretty well. Obviously, selectively use the transfer portal, not like other teams, but we've talked about this on other shows. The best programs in the country are net exporters of talent. These are teams that are keeping their recruits from high school, developing them, and then utilizing them for multiple seasons. And that's a thing that Clemson does very well, and then selectively gets guys out of the portal when they need them. I think they got Cade Klubnik, who was on fire last year and really hit his growth potential. They returned. I already said who they returned. So I think this is one of those games that, depending on where Florida State is it maturity wise, in terms of the maturity of the offense at that point, how it's clicking, has it hit 90% of its potential, or has Deuce Robinson stepped up to be the primary number one? Have they found their go-to receiver? Has somebody in the running back room stepped up to be the main tailback? Is it Chroma? Is it Sawchuk? Have they found that guy in the running game? Have they established a running game by this point? Have they consistently established a running game by this point? If they haven't done those things, if there's no identity on this team yet by this week, this will be a blowout. If they have found some sense of identity on offense, if they've been establishing the run game, if they found balance with the passing game and found the things that work, and if the defense at that point in the season is a top 30, top 35 ranked defense and shutting out the right opponents and being competitive against Alabama and Miami, then I think you have a shot at this. A slim shot, but I think you'll have a shot at this if those things have been established, if your defense is performing, if you've if your offense is a top 30, top 35 offense, you have a shot at this. But it will be less than a 25% shot, just because the advantages are too far in Clemson's side. At home, they're at home. All the production they've returned, the top, Heisman type quarterback that they have. It's just everything aligns with them. You would have to your defense would have to have an unbelievable day, and that's not to say they can't, but you would need to be firing all cylinders and get some breaks, generate some turnovers to really pull this off. And right now, at this point in the season, barring any other injuries or stuff like that, I would have to pick Clemson in this matchup just due to all the advantages at this point on paper that they have against Florida State.
Well, you summarized it pretty well. I'm not going to argue against you. I think we lose this game, especially it being on the road. It's going to be a tough place to play. Clemson fills the stadium on November the 8th. The weather should be ideal. However, we will have some injuries going into this game. There will be a couple of key injuries going into this game, and how we handle those replacements wherever they are is going to be crucial to keep the game competitive. Okay. Again, we want to keep the game competitive. That gives you a chance to pull it out. However, the Noles go into Memorial Stadium there where the big rock is. And unfortunately, we take a loss there. And that's unfortunate because it's one of the top games on the schedule.
Yeah. And I think, once again, if you keep it competitive and you keep it competitive for 4 quarters, I think that's a big sign for this team, because right now, coming off a 2-10 season and the roster turnover and seeing what you had and what you lost and what you had, to be competitive in this type of game would be a huge sign of what am I trying to say?
It projects you. It gives you the hope in the final 3 games of the season, which you could also, depending on the schedule, it could determine whether you're going to go to a bowl game of any sort. So you need that motivation. You can't go into these big games and get blown up.
No, that, and also if you're competitive in that game, you show fight for 4 quarters, and you show that you can compete at that level once again, and we'll see that in the Miami game and in the Alabama game. But if you're showing it competitively in all of those key matchups, you can sell that once again. You can say 2-10 was a that happened, but we have the new staff, we have the philosophy now, we have the types of players we want, and you can continue to sell that to those recruits you're trying to bring in.
Winning games this season is important for a few reasons.
I understand that.
One, it keeps Norvell as the coach. 2, it keeps the coaching staff together. 3, it helps recruiting. And 4, it helps our brand stay alive, because the mega leagues are coming, and we have to end up in the SEC or the Big Ten. That's how this is going to roll out. We're not staying with the ACC. So we've got to be competitive and win some football games. And if you're going to lose competitively.
Correct. So once again, I think it'll be interesting. That'll be obviously a game to watch, but it's all really going to come down to, has Florida State matured to a level where they can be competitive at that point in the season, and how far has the offense and defense come? Because Clemson's in a really, really good position to not just compete for the ACC, but to compete
Well,
for
they're
a
gonna,
national
yeah,
championship, compete for a national
yeah,
championship, not just the ACC.
they're going to be
Florida State
very
needs to have that.
disappointed if they don't make playoffs.
Yeah. So we leave South Carolina and we come back to Tallahassee and host Virginia Tech. So Virginia Tech is one of those teams where it's they tend to get some hype around the quarterback, but they haven't performed in quite some time. This is a game, if you're keeping track at home, that if you want to win 8 games, you got to beat Virginia Tech. There's no excuses for losing to a team like Virginia Tech. This is a team that, once again, hasn't hit their full potential. They like the quarterback that they have. Kyron Drones comes back. Some thought he may have explored transfer options, but he comes back. He does have some. He does have some upside, but this is a team that went 6-7 last year. Didn't recruit overly well. I think they had the 41st national ranked recruiting, so they didn't bring in a ton of players, high talent wise, that can impact right away. And they did lose some weapons to eligibility reasons. But overall, if we're just making this straightforward, Florida State should win this game on paper, and this is a game on paper that they need to win if you want to be, once again, show the nation and show the ACC that, yeah, we're back. We have the players to be back, and we're not going to let a team that has been mediocre in the ACC for the last 10 years, and it should continue to be, that we're going to lose to them, especially at home. If you still have the home field advantage of Doak Campbell Stadium, you can't let the emotional rivalry game like Clemson bleed over into a game like this. And that, I think, could, some people believe in those factors, some people don't. But that could be something that you can't let the impact of the Clemson game, whether it be a close game, a blowout, whatever it may be, you can't let the emotions of that game bleed over into this game and let it become a trap game for you as well. You have to match up 100% and beat the brakes off of them. Because once again, this is one of those games that it has to be a check for you. There's no excuses. Or if it's not a check for you, that's how you slide into a 6, 7, 8 loss season again. Games like Virginia Tech and like Virginia and games like this. So Florida State has the talent to win this game. They have the talent to win this game by 10 plus points, especially at home. And I know Kyron Drones is going to make some plays, but you've played them before. You've contained them before. This is a team you beat with players like this, and they do have some good players like Caleb Woodson and Kelvin Gillum on defense. But if you've matured, if this offense is matured, it should be matured by November 15th in the season. This has to be a check mark for Florida State, so I'm going to give them the check mark. But if this is the game that you lose, there's going to be major questions for Mike Norvell at this point in the season. You can't let the Clemson game bleed in and affect your performance in this game.
Knowles win at home. They beat the Hokies. This is not going to be a trap game because we're coming out of Clemson, probably have lost in Clemson. And so this is a game where you got to put your big boy pants back on, get dirty, and take down the Hokies. Okay? You've got to win this game. This is another must win for this football team. As you stated, we can't be losing to Stanford, Virginia Tech, Wake Forest. That's unacceptable. And I even believe AD Mike Alford has that on his schedule. We can't lose to these people. However, Mike Alford's still writing $1 million checks to Mike Norvell. So he's trying to chew down. He knows Mike Norvell is not the future head coach of this team for many years. He's got to whittle down the price.
Wait, so
Knowles win. Beat the Hokies.
You're saying Mike Norvell isn't the future coach of this team? Did you just
He is not the long-time future of this football team.
That's a statement. Okay, so we're predicting a win there. So far, going into the last 2 games of the season, you have the Noles at 8-2. So just to confirm that, you have them at 8-2 with losses to Pittsburgh and Clemson, and I have us at 7-3, which, compared to last year, I think would be respectable. The only difference between our two is that I have us losing the 3 marquee matchups on the season,
which is another question.
Yeah, and we'll let's close up the last 2 weeks and then we can do a full analysis. But
yes,
going into the last 2 games, because I believe this 4-game stretch at the end is really a key make or break for Mike Norvell, because I could see I could see a scenario where Florida State could lose all the last 4 games, because I wouldn't say they're easy, but they're above average in terms of in terms of competitiveness.
Not Virginia Tech game. They're in a total rebuild like we are,
I
but I
wouldn't say
think
it.
we're
No,
much further ahead.
I wouldn't say a total
Huh?
rebuild. They retained their
Yeah,
starting quarterback, who's been with them
yeah.
for
He's
3 years.
not an NFL quality quarterback.
Okay, well,
He's
I
not
wouldn't say
that
it's a
good.
total rebuild. Total rebuilds are Wake Forest and
Mm,
Virginia. Those are total rebuilds. Virginia
okay.
Tech can show you something. So NC State is who we. This is one of the toughest games I'll say in the season. It's not because they have, like I said, they're not going to be a playoff contender or anything like that. It's because you have to once again go on the road on a Friday night. This is your second Friday night road game, which I don't think has happened to Florida State since like the 50s or something. But 2 Friday night road games, which is never great because it means you have a short week. And Florida State historically has played terrible on the road at Carter Finley Stadium in Raleigh. They're 2-4 since
True.
2012, and that environment gets
And we
really
had some pretty good teams going in there too.
yeah. Yeah, we did, and that environment does get rowdy. This isn't like you going to Charlottesville or going to Wake Forest across the state. This is going to be a very intoxicated environment on a Friday night.
Literally intoxicated.
Yeah, and it's going to show how mentally tough this team is, as well as, and I keep saying the word, how matured has this team gotten over the
It's going to
course
be
of the
about
season.
leadership.
And I'm not saying, like I said, I'm not saying NC State's going to be competing for a national title. They may not even probably be ranked by this point. They were 6-7 last season, and they haven't recruited overly, that great.
No, no.
But it's more about the environment and the types of and your historical performance at a place like NC State and in Carter Finley Stadium. They get a quarterback like CJ Bailey, who's competent. This is going to be a team that can be competitive. NC State's a team that's going to have players that can compete, and they're going to give you trouble. This is a team that you're going to have to play all 4 quarters, and you're not. You're not going to be up 21 points heading into the 4th quarter against a team like NC State, in my opinion. This is a team that will keep it competitive, will keep you on your toes every quarter, and you're going to have to play with the same intensity you did in the first 15 minutes as you do in the last final 15 minutes. And so Dave Dorian always has this team prepared for Florida State, and I think this team scares me. They scare me on the road or at home, but this matchup particularly is one that I fear, because I don't want it to start a slide going into the Florida game that's then on the road and lead to an effect, a kind of a hangover effect heading into that game, because I think the running back room will be a key to this game, and establishing the run, taking the crowd out of it, controlling the ground, and eating clock will be crucial to this. So I'm hoping by this point in the season that Florida State has established a run game. The offensive line is firing on all cylinders, and that Florida State can establish a run game that takes the crowd. They control the line of scrimmage, and they can eat away at that clock. And it's not this back and forth fireworks affair where they're having to, basically pass the ball 35, 40 times and go back and forth for touchdown. For touchdown, hopefully we can control the ground game, eke a win out, and then get back on the road and compete in our last game of the season against Florida.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the Noles in this game. A very close and competitive game, as you've already stated. North Carolina State, they're always tough at home. It's going to be a crazy crowd on a Friday evening at 8 p.m. Great time to watch a game or be at a game in November. They're going to be tough there. I mean, I see them as a mid-level ACC. They're not going to be a title contender. They're not going to the playoffs. So to knock off Florida State, who maybe is having a decent season, okay, it'd be a big win for them. So it's going to be a tough game, but I think the Noles win. And if our kicking game, and I'm talking about Jake Weinberg and company, if our kicking game is getting the job done, it's going to help our defense, and he's going to put some points on the board, valuable points. They're going to win this game in the final minutes, and the Noles will hang on with their defense, and we'll walk out of Carter Finley with a win, then looking ahead to the Florida Gators.
All right, so you're picking Florida State. I'm gonna actually go with NC. I just this environment, and I think it'll be close down to the wire, like you said, on a kick or on a final drive. I just think with that environment, and I'm not sure that where this team will be coming off of the Clemson and Virginia Tech game, and what that stretch will look like for them. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with NC State on this one, just because I do think there'll be
Mm.
still some that environment.
To me, that loss will be inexcusable. It will be inexcusable. And we'll know, are we in a slide or are we up on top of the mountain? Because you can't lose to these types of teams and be in a rebuild.
I agree. I agree with that. And so finally, then you head into the next weekend, or the next week, November 29th.
The swamp.
And you head to the swamp and play Florida. So obviously, always kind of the highlight of the season and the kind of cap on the season to see where you stand and how things are going.
Well, we'll have to see where TJ Langway is. Is he injured and on the sidelines, or is he playing ball and he's had a great season? That's going to make a difference in the result.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because obviously they have some big games, so we'll be able to see by this point how DJ's playing and how healthy he is and how they progress as a team. Obviously, Florida went 8-5 last year, so we'll see if they've progressed or regressed or stayed about the same in terms of are they more consistent this year, how they look in the big game. So you'll have full scouting tape as they will on Florida State. Florida returns 4 starters on their offensive line, so they're returning the key pieces to protect DJ Lagway. They recruited incredibly well in the offseason and added about 15 new players, 13 new transfers in the offseason to try to bolster their defense and their offense there. And and I think that the thing with them is that their running game, I think, is going to be pretty scary this year with Jaden Baugh still around and doing what he does. That is the thing that I keep coming back to is the defense of Florida State is how is it going to look? And obviously in the last week we'll know what to expect. We'll know is the 3-3-5 working? Is Tony White's 3-3-5, though it's susceptible to the run, is it going to be capable of stopping a guy like Jaden Baugh on Florida, who's extremely explosive and can get it done from week to week? We'll know those things about how this defense is performing right now. We'll know who's standing out, where they're weak, and how it can be applied to this. But now, obviously we're predicting these things. I do see this as a shootout of sorts. I think this game will be within 14 points going into the third and fourth quarter. And obviously a fumble or an interception here can obviously make that point total explode at the last second or last quarter, stuff like that. But I think Florida State is capable of keeping this game within 10 to 14 points and trying to generate turnovers or takeaways or action. The biggest disadvantage to them is that it's on the road. You're in one of the most hostile environments in football.
It's terrible.
And you lose. You obviously don't. You lose a lot when you have to travel on the road to the swamp. So at this point, if I'm just looking at, and then you're going against obviously JJ Lagway, who stood out last year, and I would assume with him and the running backs and the people around him is that he's going to continue to mature if he can stay healthy. That is,
his health has been a big concern even in fall practice.
So we'll know by then, but right now, as we look at it, we're going to have to assume he's healthy and the players around him are healthy, just like Florida State is. So right now, the way I see it is it close, but close is not good enough. And based on there's more knowns on Florida than there are on Florida State. I'm going to have to pick Florida just because we're going to have to find out what Florida State has throughout the season. I think Florida has more knowns on their roster right now than Florida State does. And especially going on the road, I'm going to have to pick Florida right now. But I hope by the time we get to this matchup and we're talking about this last week of the season, that my prediction changes, that I can say, no, I'm predicting Florida State by 7 just because I know what our quarterback does. I know what our defense can contain. I know what our running backs can do, what they can put up. So, but right now I'm picking Florida.
Yeah, we're gonna know a lot more about the prediction of this game, which is a huge game.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 2 huge games. I always said I don't care if we don't win any other games. I want to beat Miami and I want to beat Florida. If you lose to both these teams, the interstate rivalry, you lose the Florida championship, so to speak, as they say, that's a tough pill to swallow. I don't care how many other Wake Forest or Pittsburgh or Virginia Tech that you beat. Nobody cares. All right. They do care about beating the Gators. Okay. We all live here. So it's a big problem. Unfortunately, the Noles will lose this game, but it all is going to depend on two people. Is Tommy Castellanos still healthy and having a productive season? And is Langway, how is he doing? Is he still standing up and having a productive? It's all going to depend on where these guys are, I believe, at the end of the year. But I see a competitive game at the Swamp, but the Noles lose a tough one there.
Yep. All right, so we're both picking Florida.
And Norvell, if he does lose to Miami and Florida, it's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough off season.
So this is where we see it, and obviously, you got Florida State going. Basically, you got 9-3 here,
which is very optimistic. Very optimistic from me.
9-3 with losses against Pittsburgh at home, at Clemson, and at Florida. I have us going 7-5 with losses against Bama at home, Miami, Clemson, NC State, and Florida. So I have us going 1-4 in that last Final Four.
Well, yeah, and I think that leads us into KB. It leads us into what of the top games on this schedule. There's like 4 or 5, in my opinion. How well does Norvell have to do in that 4 or 5 game area to really keep his job? Is getting 6 wins enough, and he goes to a toilet bowl, the Pop-Tarts bowl, and plays someone that nobody cares about? Or does he have to split the state? He has to win Florida or beat Miami or lose. He has to split that. The Clemson and Alabama game. What if you lose Alabama, Florida, Clemson, and Miami? Does Norvell keep his job? I think it could be tough. I think it could be tough for him to keep his job if he doesn't show a competitive nature, which means you could be competitive in 12 games and lose all 12. All right. That's possible. Okay. The thing is, how does he have to do, in your opinion, in these top 4 games on the schedule, 4 to 5 games on the schedule?
So once again, if you lost the marquee matchups, you're likely learning from the opponents. You go 8-4. So if they take care of business against the people they should beat, you're
that are inexcusable to lose to. Yeah,
that's 8-4.
Yeah,
and so I think if you do that, if he does that while staying competitive, that's 6-2 in the ACC. That actually does. You could potentially at 6-2 in the ACC, you could be fighting for a shot at the ACC title with that record. So.
But I'm asking you about the 4 games.
Let me finish.
Yeah.
So 8-4, 6-2. That's if you lose all. That's out. I have a 7 wins, less than that, with a loss to NC State. But I think it's if you go to 8 wins and lose to all the marquee guys, but stay competitive, I think he can sell that to Alford and say, we brought this back. Look what we've done. Look what we've established an identity of this football team again. Look what I've done with a quarterback for 1 year. I can do that with a new quarterback. I've got now young running backs in the running back room. We've established a running game again. Look at the types of O-line players we got. I can do that again. Look at the new defensive, coordinator in this, the program or in the guy in that strategy we built with the 3-3-5. Now the players, the young guys we have, the linebackers and defensive backs. Look what we've done there. So if that's assuming that those position groups do put up numbers, and we talked about this top 35, top 30 defense and offense. I mean, if those numbers improve by 80 points from last season, which they would need to. I mean, we have the worst ranked offense in the country and a kind of 50%, bottom 30% defense. Our defense wasn't superb either. But if both those things improve dramatically, yet he loses to the 4 marquee matches, but stays competitive, I think not only does it save his job because it's hard to fire him because of the money, but not only does it save his job, but I think it will save him with the fan base because he can say, we're building something again. We built an identity that is that we found our identity. We found the strategy for winning football games, and we need another year to build on top of it with even more talent. We found our running back of the future, whether that's Cromar or one of the other young guys. We found the receivers who will be here, whether that's Reese Robinson, because they have a lot of young guys there. We found our defensive backs because we have a lot of young guys who will be in that roster and rotation. We have our linebackers because they'll be back for another year. So he'll be, if what you're saying is true and he wins 8 and stays competitive in the marquee matchups, he'll be able to sell the fan base. And I do believe that will give Alford enough where he won't have to pay him the $40 million, whatever buyout it is, and give him another year to build on top of that success. Now, we may not define that as success because it's 8 or 9 wins. It's 8 wins and none of them against big programs. But once again, if he's competitive and then wins the games he should win, I think that will be enough to give him another year to build on top of that, especially with the new staff.
Wow, that was a mouthful. You should go to work for Mike Norvell.
Well,
he could use you in his. You'd be much better as his PR guy than he has now. Okay, who basically says, "All right, you're next, Brent." Yeah. What? Yeah. Oh my God, it's terrible. If he loses the 4, you call 4 marquee games, if he goes 0-4 on those, I'm going to be really having a problem. And the only reason Alford will keep him is basically because he's having to pay him so damn much money. It's not financial intelligence to fire the guy right away, that he can maybe milk him for another year. But as I said, Mike Norvell is not the long-time future head football coach at this program. I'm telling you, everybody can write that down. He is not the marquee guy that's going to take this program back to the promised land. It's not going to happen. He's going to have to flip this entire roster again. He's going to have to bring in 20 guys or more to flip this entire roster, because that's where we are as a program, and that's what he's got to do. And I'm not suggesting we just get high school guys to play. I'm not suggesting that. This program has to win half of these marquee games for him to be able to rally a defense of what he's been able to accomplish. And if he loses a couple of games that he should not lose, he's going to have a lot of this, as Lucille Ball, you say, Ricky, you're going to have a lot of explaining to do. All right. Because the fan base is going to groan if they lose these marquee games and don't win at Miami or Florida. That would be horrible for this fan base. And so I think it's going to be an interesting season, and a lot of it's going to depend on your quote marquee players, if we have any. I don't know if we do. If we do, can they stay healthy? Can they be productive? Interesting season coming up, which kicks off a week from today.
Yeah, and I want everyone to keep in mind too, like we said, you could be this schedule, has its tough games. We keep talking about the marquee matchups: Alabama, Miami, Clemson, and Florida. But if you can chip away one of those, if you can chip away, obviously the ACC games, so that
you got to get one. You got to get one.
Lose the Florida and Alabama games; those don't mean anything to your conference play. Drop those would be the games to drop. But if you can chip away the Miami game,
I understand. I understand they're not conference. I understand.
So if you can chip away, if you can do what you do against Stanford and Virginia and Wake Forest and stuff like that, and you chip away the Miami game, you're 6-1 in the ACC, and you're in play, because remember, it was SMU was 8-0, Clemson was 7-1, Miami was 6-2.
We are not a playoff team. We are not a playoff.
I'm not talking about the playoffs, but you're back in the picture for the ACC title, which gets eyeballs, which gets media, and gets you in the picture for that. And then you sell that to recruits. That is what this is about. This isn't about getting to the playoffs next year. It's about being in contention
I understand.
for something. And so I'm saying the path to that isn't hard if you do what you're supposed to do. It's not that hard. I mean, Miami was one ranked team last year, and they lost to them. And
yeah, okay. So no, I got you. I understand.
Schedule is a lot tougher than it was last season. So,
but you know what I was saying? I was watching that Irish, I call it the Irish Bowl, Iowa State versus K-State, which was a hell of a game. It was really a good ball game. But I tweeted out and I said, hey, listen, to the Florida State recruiting office and player development, off-field guys, right? I think is it Derek Ray? He runs that operation.
Sure.
I said, you guys should start looking at these quarterbacks this year. All the games that are being played. This young quarterback that played for Iowa State, they won the game. They won the game, and his name is Rocco Beckett. Rocco Betch. He's from Wesley Chapel, Florida, which just is north of Tampa. Okay, he's like a junior. This guy had a damn good game, throwing the ball, running the option. I said, this is a guy that's going to end up in the portal. You don't think he'd love to get back to the state of Florida at some point? And I'm not suggesting he is. You have to watch him all year round. But our off-field recruiting people, instead of just, okay, let's lay out the red carpet for the high school guys coming in this coming weekend. Jesus, you got interns to do that shit. Okay? You should be evaluating player evaluation on these guys.
You don't think they're doing that?
Well, I don't know what the hell they're doing. We were 2-10. So what am I supposed to think? They were talking about, I saw an interview with him. He was talking about, they asked him, well, what do you do on recruiting weekend when the high school guy, let's talk about how are you evaluating current players? You're going to have to flip this roster again, KB. You're going to have to bring in a quarterback. You're going to have to bring in an entire offensive line. You should be looking at players. You don't think this guy would be interested in coming back to the state? He could be. I'm not saying he's the guy we want. I've never even heard of the guy before. His dad was a big player in the NFL for about 10 years. But the bottom line is I'm suggesting, I don't know what that off the field people do. Nobody ever talks about them. Nobody ever interviews them. So I guess my point is, and you were saying the same thing, player evaluation is going to become critical over the next few years, not just this year or next year, but the next few years. Because guys are going to be jumping. If we have guys that have done very well and have a good season this year for us, you don't think they're going to jump into the portal? It's all about the money.
Yep.
But some of that's closing down because of roster cost. So caps. So that's all.
All right. I think that's going to do it. So once again, this is our final predictions for the season. Obviously, we still have our weekly.
Well, yeah, we want to be able to change them a little bit, because this goes in thinking everybody's healthy. Everybody's healthy. Everybody's playing every week, and that's not going to happen.
Yeah, and that's fine. This is for fun.
I don't want
this fucking prediction. So
I don't want to at the end of the season fans or anybody.
Who cares?
Say no. I'm just saying. Say, well, you said that they would. No, each week this could change. That's why they have betting odds.
And that's why you need to watch us weekly so we can talk about what's the most recent news on the matchup and who's hurt, who's
absolutely
not, who's how does everyone look. So yeah, next week we'll be doing our Alabama show, and discuss what's any latest news coming out of that. Obviously they lost their running back most recently in that matchup, so obviously they'll be down when the returning starters there. But it'll be interesting to see why the old man thinks Florida State has the advantage there, and why I think they don't. So definitely be sure to join us in that episode next week. Outside of that, I think that's going to do it. So thank you all again for coming out. Thank you again for the support. Hit that like, hit that subscribe so you get all the notifications when we do these shows. And we'll be sure to see you next week.
And maybe I'll have a new computer.
Hopefully he'll have a new computer. So thank you all again. Have a great rest of your weekend. And as always, go Noles. Go Noles. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Go Noles.
Seminole sideline 365. Feel the roar, we're coming alive. Garnet and gold in the battle we thrive. This is our house where legends arrive. Every yard we take.